Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Moviegoers need not stand when the national anthem is played during a film screening. The Supreme Court said on Tuesday in response to requests for clarification on its previous order. It clarified that when the national anthem is played as part of the storyline of a film, newsreel or a documentary, the audience need not stand. The court also clarified that when the anthem is played in cinema halls, it is not compulsory for the audience to sing along. On November 30th, the court had ordered cinema halls across the nation to play the national anthem before every movie screening, and the audience must rise out of respect. The ruling was based on a petition by an NGO in Bhopal. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the directives of the Supreme Court on the national anthem. Joining me on the program today are Soli Sorabji, former Attorney General of India, Professor Rajbir Sharma, RSS thinker, Professor Aditya Mukherjee, Center for Historical Studies, JNU, and Satya Prakash, legal editor, The Tribune. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Sorabji, I'd like to start with you, of course, and get your thoughts on the directives of the Supreme Court on the national anthem.
Well, I think I don't think the Supreme Court really speaking can issue directives about standing up during national anthem. It's not really within the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. It's a matter you stand up out of respect. It can't be judicially ordained. It can't be legislatively prescribed. You do it out of respect. But if you don't stand up, what happens? What's the consequence? I think this kind of directions the Supreme Court should refrain from passing, because it's not in the judicial sphere.
Sure, fair enough. Your point is taken. You know, Satya Prakash, something very interesting that Mr. Sorabji is stating. People should stand out of respect. It shouldn't be forced down upon you. Patriotism, nationalism should come from within.
Yeah, of course, it must come from within. And what the court has done, it's a case of judicial overreach. It's not within the domain. If the politicians, if there are institutions like Parliament, had they thought that it was needed, they would have enacted a law and made it compulsory. But primarily, it's a question of your own, respect for the country or the institutions that are built, and particular, like national anthem or national emblem, you respect them. Enforcing them through judicial orders, I'm afraid most likely people will disobey it. But beyond that, what is disturbing is this kind of order is going to give rise to vigilantism. Like suppose there is a theatre and somebody is not standing up for whatever reasons. Maybe somebody is crippled for physically not good enough to stand up and to pay respect to the national anthem. And people will not ask that person whether you are okay or you have some problem. And there have been instances where people have been, taken to task for such kind of conduct. So it is beyond the purview of the judiciary to do this, one. Second, it should come from within. Otherwise, it's difficult to enforce. Third, what I find slightly disturbing, because you go to a cinema, to cinema halls primarily for entertainment, not for a lesson in nationalism. This kind of order, and that too, had it been schools, I would have accepted it. It's okay that in the morning at assembly time, all the students, they gather and they sing national anthem. It's good. But movie, theatre, people go there for different purposes, and you are forcing them to do this. This is not going to inculcate any kind of respect for the national anthem, or it is not going to instill feeling of nationalism.
Sure.
This should have been avoided. This is one such case where the Supreme Court has exceeded its limit. I am afraid there will be more petitions on this issue because the court is still seized of the matter. The only good thing is that this is an interim order and the court is likely to take a final view of the matter. Maybe by the time the final view is taking into considerations all the discussions and debates we have in the media, intelligentsia and everything,
sure,
they will pass some order which will not be of this kind.
Indeed. All right. Professor Sharma, why is it that the national anthem cannot be a celebration? Why should it always be a solemn affair like this? Why can't it be a celebration? You know, because patriotism also can be a celebration. You're celebrating the country at the end of the day.
I would agree with you 100% that it should be really a matter of celebration with every citizen of the country. And the respect for national anthem or the national flag should come from within naturally. It is our obligation also. It is the obligation of every citizen of the country to commit itself to the cause of nationalism, national interest, national unity, national integrity, and national security. It has been, I don't agree with the kind of arguments that were given by two of my very learned co-panelists, that the judiciary has perhaps overstepped its jurisdiction. It is the duty of the judiciary to defend and protect the Constitution, if it is, in its opinion, needed. You go through the preamble of the Constitution. The preamble of the Constitution very clearly makes it an obligation on all of us to work for the unity and integrity of the country and also fraternity of the people. And I think if we stand up in the respect to national anthem and the national flag, it is going to promote and protect that kind of a commitment in the Constitution. And preamble is a part of the Constitution now.
But why be so rigid?
No, there's not a question of rigidity. You know, even the Article 51A, which is talking of the fundamental duties, now this is one of the fundamental duties to show respect. And some people may argue, no, the directive principles are not binding, but there are several directive principles of state policy which have been interpreted and implemented by the judiciary through their interpretations, and they have become a part of the body on fundamental rights. So this is a kind of unfair to the judiciary to say that it is overreaching. Now, so far as talk of rigidity is concerned, you know, many times when a person fails to perform its obligations or other duties, it should not require in normal situations the external intervention, whether of the state or of any institution. But you know that when it is our moral obligation as a son or a daughter to look after our senior citizens and also our parents. But when it was felt that some of the people, some of the sons and daughters are not really looking after and not observing their obligation effectively and efficiently, then legislation came. It was also not a case of rigidity. It was a question of certain cultural kind of obligations and also legal obligations to perform to our senior citizens and parents. So similarly, one question was raised that vigilantism. You know, anybody who takes the law into their own hands, there is a law to deal with them. And so far as the person who is not capable of, say, handicapped, who cannot stand up, it is the duty of the staff there who must look after this, that nothing untoward happens. So exceptions have taken place.
Sure,
but exceptions cannot be made as a rule to condemn this kind of a situation.
Sure, but you're talking
nationalism,
about,
sir,
Professor,
just 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. I want to bring in the others also to the debate.
Please, just 1 minute.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that this kind of argument will in fact promote the anti-national and separatist forces. On the other hand, if we respect our national anthem and flag, it will strengthen our national commitment.
Sure. You know, the point that you are making there, talking about the separatist elements and anti-national elements, shouldn't those elements also be taken care of by the law and taken care of by the people who uphold the law? I mean, that's a different debate altogether, but Professor Mukherjee, you know, talking about this debate of national anthem, you know, the issue as such, do you believe that, you know, I was talking about celebration to Professor Sharma, and, you know, we've seen abroad, you know, in the United States, for example, the national anthem is played, and, you know, it's a celebration of sorts, and everyone participates, and it brings out that, you know, that feeling of patriotism naturally. Why is it that in India it does not bring out the same kind of patriotism?
I don't agree with you. I think it does. When I listen to the national anthem, especially if it is sung in tune. Often it is not. My hair stands on end, you know, and that happens to a whole bunch of people. But the issue is that you cannot force it down people's throat. The context, we must look at this context. I think this issue should not even have gone to the courts. How do we express our love to the country? Do we express it by working for its people, by bringing glory to it in science, in music, in arts, or do we express it by ensuring that, you know, who eats what, who sits down when, who stands up when, and if they don't, then we beat them up? That's fascism. That's the kind of aggressive nationalism. Our nationalism was never part of it. It was inclusive, it was humane, it brought people naturally towards it. It's like Hindi films. You don't have to make people love it. You know, they begin to love it on their own. You know, nationalism is not to be brought in by force. Nobody is to decide what is in national interest. Who will decide? Vigilant groups? And secondly, in this particular context, the people who had nothing to do with Indian national movement, people who would not even put the national flag and would insist that we want our saffron flag up, are now telling you that you sing the national anthem, stand up when I say so and sit down when you say so. If it is in between a film, then you don't stand up. If it is before the film, then you stand up. This is rubbish. I mean, I think we're making a joke out of our nationalism. This is not the way we express our nationalism.
Sure. Mr. Sorabji, Professor Mukherjee has a point there. I mean, national anthem is the national anthem whenever it is played. I mean, be it in the middle of a film or wherever else it is, you need to show it respect. How can you have two different sets of rules when the national anthem is played at two different times?
But look, the basic issue is that you can't judicially ordain patriotism or nationalism. The whole point is, suppose our people, fundamental duties, are they judicially enforceable? And fundamental duties are enforceable against citizens. But suppose there are people in the audience who are not citizens. Then you want to force them to stand up? These things unnecessarily raise complications. I can understand, bring about a culture of nationalism, bring about a culture of showing respect to our national anthem and our national flag. But these things are beyond the judicial sphere. You cannot judicially enforce them. It leads to all kinds of complications. As I said, suppose there are people in the audience who are not Indian citizens. Are they bound to get up? They will not get up, not out of disrespect, they will not get up because, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, they may have some conscientious relief that we won't get up and sing the praise of any national anthem or national flag. Now, they may be right or they may be wrong, but you can't force them. I think the whole thing, this is a matter, the judiciary has really gone haywire. Judiciary should concentrate on enforcing the fundamental rights of the people and not fundamental duties expressed in its right terms. This leads to many complications and undesirable results.
Sure, that's a very valid point that Mr. Sorabji is making. Satyaprakash, as far as the fundamental rights are concerned, you have the right to freedom of speech, you have the right to freedom of expression. So isn't this infringing upon that?
Well, I oppose this order on a different ground. First is the issue of judicial overreach. It is none of the work of the judiciary to do this. If at all it is needed, it is for Parliament to legislate. It is not for judiciary to do it. They have been doing it, and now it has to be checked because they are getting into areas where they have no business to be. So it has to be checked. One. Second is, look at the environment in a movie theater. People go there for entertainment. I am saying don't make it there. Make it, if at all such kind of order is needed, it has to be from the executive. Legislature should make law, the executive should enforce it, judiciary should see to it that it is not violated. If violated, people can go to them. But they are not supposed to make this law. One. Second is, if at all it's needed, it should be in schools, not in cinema halls. So there is, to my understanding, there is complete non-application of mine in this order. There has to be some judicial application of mine. We should understand where this kind of order can be enforced and should be enforced. This is not the place where you enforce nationalism. This is not needed. Third, in every society, there are certain non-negotiables that cannot be, those things cannot be negotiated. Nationalism or patriotism or respect for national anthem, it is non-negotiable. I have respect for a national anthem, you have, and everybody has.
Everyone has, yes.
But then the way to express it can be different. To enforce everybody to express it in a particular manner, that is bad. You are curtailing my freedom, as you said, 19(1)(a) guarantees right to freedom of speech and expression to everybody. So you are curtailing my freedom if you enforce me to express it in a particular manner. Having said that, I am saying if the national anthem is played on a particular, at a particular point in time, on a particular occasion, say August 15 or January 26 or a particular function at Rashtrapati Bhavan,
or India wins a medal at the Olympics.
Yes,
I mean, that is definitely a hair-raising experience, like Professor Mukherjee spoke about.
That's a different thing altogether. They are not being done on the orders of the court or on the orders of the executive. That's a different occasion. Everybody respects it. Everybody sings it, or at least stands up in respect. But to do it judicially through an order, this should not be done, because we are stretching it too far. This should not be done, and I'm afraid the courts are getting into areas where they have no business to be.
Sure. Professor Sharma, you know, there needs to be a reason really to appreciate the national anthem, and you know, to have a hair-raising experience like Professor Mukherjee spoke about, maybe winning an Olympic medal, maybe winning a World Cup match or something to the tune of that. When you go in to have fun, when you go to watch probably an A-rated movie, you cannot have the national anthem being played before that.
I don't know whether playing the national anthem in the beginning in any way hinders the right of the moviegoers from entertaining themselves. I don't entertain this argument, because entertainment follows, and I am free to entertain whatever purpose I have gone to the cinema hall. But let me tell you another thing. We talk of freedom of speech and expression. We talk of fundamental rights. But I think we quote these things out of context or in a partial way. Article 19(1) gives you freedom of speech and expression, fine, but there are attached kind of restrictions, that the state can place restrictions on your freedom of speech and expression in the name of, if it is against morality, our friendly relations with other countries, the security of the nation, unity, integrity of the nation. Then, say for example, I have a right to freedom to move in any part of the country. But if I am suffering from some contagious disease, I can be always prevented. No, you can't go. So let us tell these things also, that freedom of speech and expression is not a license. It's a freedom. And therefore, to do anything and to speak anything, even if it goes against the national interest, cannot be permitted either by the law or by the judiciary. Secondly, I would say...
He just has to interject, and he has a point to raise. Before you can respond to that after that.
Legal point, and Mr. Sorabji would appreciate it. To invoke Article 19(2), reasonable restrictions, restrictions have to be based on a law enacted by Parliament or a state legislature. Here there is no law, and the court's order is not based on any law enacted by any.
Sure.
It's not based on a statute.
Mr. Sorabji also wants to respond to something. Yes, Mr. Sorabji.
No, I wanted to point out that freedom of speech, the freedom to speak also means freedom not to speak.
Sure.
It also contains freedom not to speak. And you cannot compel a person to do that. That's the whole point.
No, so
sure.
As someone rightly said, judiciary has gone in spheres where it has no business to go. It must patriotism, nationalism, it must be spontaneous. It can't be judicially ordered, and if it is done, then this leads to all kinds of complications. Then there is no limit to what the judiciary will do. Let them concentrate on the fundamental rights of the people, which are being violated day in and day out, like under-trial prisoners, rather than get into this. So freedom to speak also means freedom not to speak.
Sure. Sure. Yes. Yes, Professor.
I think the fundamental rights and directive principles state policy are not contradictory to each other. They are supplementary to each other, and there is a relationship between the two. I have already stated that Supreme Court and other judicial bodies have taken recourse to directive principles while interpreting the scope of fundamental rights. I would say that another question was raised that there is no need to enforce it. Let it be natural. I have said that, you know, promoting some kind of a feeling that I belong to a nation that is India. And that feeling, if it comes to my mind, even if by some kind of a prescription, it will go a long way in changing my attitude of mind.
Don't you think that feeling already exists?
No, that exists, but you know, you also will appreciate, sir, that there is a section of the people in India who pass on the secrets of defense
Sure,
to our rivals, to our enemies. Why? Because there is a lack of nationalist feeling and
Professor
national
Sharma,
commitment.
but that section, those fringe elements are never going to change. That's how they're going to continue to
No,
be.
that is our assumption. That is our assumption. I will tell you that Valmiki to begin with was not a saint. You know, he started, there is a proof that he became later the author of Ramayana, from Mara to Ram Ram.
Sure.
Right? So therefore, it is saying that no, such kind of elements will not improve, will not be able to imbibe that feeling. I don't agree with
Okay,
this.
okay. Would you agree with that assessment, Professor Mukherjee?
Firstly, this freedom of speech business, coming from an institution which has been badgered because we exercised our freedom of speech, calling us anti-national and what have you. This is precisely it. The Supreme Court, Indian Supreme Court, has also agreed to this. The American Supreme Court has also said the same, and Gandhiji said the same in 1920. Freedom of speech is circumscribed only by if somebody is committing or allowing imminent violence. Otherwise, you have absolute freedom of speech. Gandhiji said,
defended under freedom of speech and
absolutely,
expression.
absolutely.
Let him complete.
Gandhiji says freedom of speech is like water. Have you ever heard of anybody diluting water? It is a non-negotiable. Freedom of speech was exercised by American students during the Vietnam War. You know, this is what a democracy is all about. It is absolute. You don't mess with freedom of speech. Secondly, you do not enforce nationalism. Nationalism cannot be enforced by making somebody sing the national anthem. As I said, who are the people who are asking you? If I were to say that from the sweat and blood of Indians, when we train our engineers and doctors and they park themselves in the United States, they are being anti-national. They are the people who are now telling me that you sing the national anthem, you teach like this in JNU, otherwise you are anti-national. Who will decide? Who will decide what is good, what is bad? So best is to leave it alone. If the best is to practice being a democratic, inclusive, civilized, humane country, and people will have admiration for it on their own. You don't have to do anything. And national anthem is just one song. There are dozens of similar songs. There are dozens of images which, as I said, which have the exact impact of arousing great sense of patriotism and love for our people. So let's focus on those rather than on becoming these bodyguards of Indian nationalism and smashing anybody who you think is not being nationalist.
Sure. Mr. Sorabji, this of course is an interim order that the Supreme Court has passed right now. Do you believe that good sense will prevail somewhere, and you know that the Supreme Court will ensure that judicial overreach does not really take place?
Well, I can't predict what the Supreme Court will do. That will be a very daunting task for me. But I'm sure they take into account all these considerations which have been voiced in the print media, in the electronic media, and modify the order accordingly. Because as someone said, you cannot enforce patriotism, you cannot enforce nationalism by legislation or by judicial orders. You must create the proper climates for that matter. I can understand in school, as someone said, you are made to sing that, but you go for entertainment and you're asked to stand up and sing the national anthem or to pay respect. Why go into these things? Causes complications. Now I'm sure the Supreme Court will modify its order, but as I said, to ask me to say what the Supreme Court is going to do,
sure,
I need an astrologer.
Indeed. All right. All right. Satyaprakash, I've got 4 minutes left on the program, so I'd like to get final concluding remarks from all my guests right now, beginning with you. Of course, ironically, it was, Rabindranath Tagore who himself said that that nationalism will be a menace, and I'm not for nationalism. And today we're talking about the national anthem and nationalism.
Nationalism is a menace or can be a menace. I don't agree. Nationalism is one of the best things we have, and as a nation we have progressed a lot, and this constitution has given us a strength, and we are still progressing, and this constitution as a tool for resolution of disputes, it's working well. But I agree to some of the points raised by Professor Sharma, that there are elements who are out there to destroy this nation. We should be dealing with them, and very sternly and with firm hand, but this order is not going to help in that.
Sure.
They are needed to be dealt with in a different fashion, and the state has different kind of apparatus to deal with them, and they will deal with them. But only point I raise is it's a larger issue of courts getting into areas where they are no business to. So one. Second, there is an occasion for everything. This is not the occasion. Going to movie, you are going for entertainment. That's not the occasion when you are asked to do something of this sort. And third, this is bound to give rise to vigilantism and unnecessarily law and
order. It has already happened. After the November order, we saw many people being thrashed in Tamil Nadu and elsewhere.
And as I said, there are certain non-negotiables in every society, every system. Nationalism is non-negotiable. Respect for national anthem is non-negotiable. The only thing is there are ways to express it. It cannot be enforced through a judicial order. If it comes to that, then I am afraid nobody is going to be obeying this kind of order.
Indeed.
Even if nationalist, the person all the time you are asking, as you said, there are certain other kinds of films being shown in cinema halls, and just before the film starts, you are singing national anthem. That's not the occasion. The court should avoid it.
Sure. Professor Sharma, your closing remarks, concluding remarks.
I think I broadly agree what Mr. Satyaprakash has stated, with only one rider, and that is that suppose the judiciary does not enforce it, he has no objection if the parliament enforces. Meaning enforcement of nationalism is not the issue. Issue is who is enforcing, the court or the parliament. Well, there can be no, I can say there is no debate on this. If suppose this order is creating some kind of problem, let the parliament intervene and enact a law.
Sure.
And secondly, I would say that it is always welcome to have some kind of a feeling to be a national of a country, and we should be proud citizens of India. Now, how to go about it? That is the issue. The issue is that there are so many functions, official, non-official. Whenever the national anthem is played, we all of us stand up. We all of us stand up. And at the same time, there was some kind of, because a large number of people go to cinema halls, perhaps that could have weighed with the judiciary, that let them also stand up and imbibe a feeling of nationalism. I don't think it is going to interfere with the motive of going for entertainment.
Point taken. Out of time, so I'd like to get to quick closing comments from Mr. Mukherjee as well. We spoke about where the national anthem should be played. The Parliament of India has been brought up quite often on this debate. Parliament of India is the supreme body of the country. Shouldn't Parliament sessions or Parliament, the day in Parliament start with the national anthem?
I think it's a very good idea if they did. But even if they didn't, I don't think it tests our nationalism. If we have to learn anything about our nationalism, let us learn from our national movement, the greatest mass movement in world history, one of the greatest national movements. They did not enforce it. They didn't force nationalism down anybody's throat. They appreciated difference. They worked with people who stood completely opposed to their point of view. And that is how nationalism is to be practiced. If you practice a good nationalist practice, then it grows. Aggressive nationalism, aggrandizing nationalism, violent nationalism is fascism. We don't call it nationalism. In India, we don't call it nationalism. That's nationalism of Hitler, that's nationalism of Mussolini, and nationalism.
Who are you referring to as they?
I'm out of time on the program. Mr. Saurabh, please close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Well, we heard the different points of view. Everyone is agreed. The nationalism is a good thing. The whole question is, can it be judicially enforced? I think it cannot, and it must be left to the person, and there are various ways of really bringing about the feeling for nationalism. And mind you, there is one saying of Dr. Johnson, which I always remember, that patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. So many people who may get up may have no feeling for the notion, but may get up for different reasons.
Okay. On that note, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time.